Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you, and welcome to today's true crime episode. I am so happy that you are here. I am so happy that somehow in all of this that we're forced to deal with on the day today you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or Bratterstein, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be discussing the murder of 17-year-old Liz Reiser and the attempted murder and amazing survival story of her best friend, Brandi Hicks. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, sometimes 2 a week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. Now, before we get into the details of today's case, I first need to say a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video. It is Factor. Factor is a meal delivery service that delivers fresh, never frozen, chef-crafted, ready-to-eat meals that are ready to eat in just 2 minutes, which for someone like me is a lifesaver. Someone like me with my schedule is a lifesaver. You guys may know that I have tried and loved HelloFresh in the past. Well, HelloFresh now owns Factor, and I love being able to bounce back and forth between the two services and love on one for a little bit, love on the other for a little bit, and see what is like feeling right for me, see which one is the one for me. And lately I have been really loving on Factor. Now, Factor has a lot of very redeeming qualities. There's a lot of things about the service that I enjoy, but the big one, the thing that really just is for me, is it takes the stress out of meal planning. Because if you know, which I'm sure a lot of you know, that the mental load that it takes to plan every single meal that you're going to eat every single day, 3 times a day, and if you have toddlers, more than 3 times a day, it's heavy, man. It is heavy, and Factor helps take that load off your shoulders and helps set you up for success. And they do this by helping me save the time and energy that I would otherwise be using by going to the grocery store, by prepping food, by cleaning up after I cook. Saving that time and energy is invaluable, and it allows me to have the opportunity, the luxury to put that energy into things that really matter to me, like, I don't know, being a present parent or making sure that I'm able to get the workload that I give myself done in the time that I have given myself to do it, all without sacrificing my wellness goals. Which, listen, I have been known to make those sacrifices more often than I'd like to admit. I fall into the overpriced takeout trap just out of sheer exhaustion and convenience. But like, here's the thing. Factor is even more convenient because it's already in my fridge. It's dietitian approved, and Factor meals are more delicious and cheaper than takeout anyway. And what's super amazing is that they have a robust selection of things for you to choose from. Each week, they have 35 different recipes on their weekly menu that you can choose from. And they're very inclusive in their offerings, from things like options like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, or my personal go-to, the vegan and veggie options, obviously, as you guys may know. And on top of the meals, which they already have plenty of meals to choose from, Factor now has loads of snack options too. They have 60 different add-ons weekly, things like breakfast, and my own personal favorite, the thing I love to keep my fridge stocked with, smoothies. Because you know your girl loves smoothies. So if all of that sounds as good to you as it does to me, make sure to head to factor75.com, or you can click the link in my description box and use the code 50BRATTERSTEIN at checkout to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. Again, that's code 50BRATTERSTEIN at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box today. Now, I just want to say a big thank you to Factor for partnering with me on today's video. It's partners like Factor that make it possible for me to put out videos as consistently as I do. And a big thank you to you guys for always being so supportive of all of my sponsors. You rock. Don't ever change. With all of that said, let's go ahead and get into this video. Now, this video is on a case that I have known about for a long time. I learned about it years ago when I watched an episode of the TV show I Survived, which I don't watch a lot of true crime shows anymore, but I Survived is one of those ones that just captures me. And I think it has to do with the fact that the people on the show are the people who survive situations. So they're telling their own story. And one of the people who told their own story was Brandi Hicks. She sat on camera and talked about the torture that she endured one night when she and her best friend Liz tried to do something nice, tried to help somebody who was in need and put their trust in somebody who didn't deserve it. And as a result of that, Brandy went through hours of torture, but was lucky enough to survive. And her best friend, 17-year-old Liz, was murdered. So today I'm going to tell you the entire story. I read all the things so that you do not have to. And at the end of this video, I want you to answer the question of the day. I'm going to give it to you now so you can have it kicking around in your brain as we go through the details of this case. But of course, I want you to answer what you have something to go on. And the question of the day is this. Do you think that the man who attacked Brandy and Liz intended to kill them that night? Or do you think it was, like he said, a spur of the moment thing that just kind of happened? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below because I'm curious to hear what you think. Now, with all of that said, come gather around and let me tell you the story of the murder of Liz Reiser and the attempted murder but survival of her best friend, Brandi Hicks. Our story today is going to take place in a place called Dover, Ohio. And this is a small town that borders New Philadelphia and is about 68 miles south of Cleveland. It was in this place that at about 1:30 a.m. on Thursday, May 25th of the year 2000, an off-duty police officer was driving down the road coming home from a shift when he saw somebody walking on the side of the road. And when he sees this person, they're kind of stumbling a bit. So he thinks that this is somebody who had been drinking because there was a bar that was just down the road. So they're like, oh, this is clearly like somebody trying to get home from the bar but didn't drive, right? So he decides to get closer because this person is stumbling down a dark road. I mean, it's 1:30 in the morning. Anything could happen. So he gets closer to see if maybe they need some help. And as he gets closer, he realizes that this isn't a drunk person from the bar. This is actually a, quote, petite and fragile teenage girl who, when she sees him, like get close to her and start to pass her, she is frantic and starts waving him down. So in response, he pulls his car over and he finds a completely hysterical young girl. She's soaking wet. She's beaten. She is barefoot and she is just crying so much. And it's difficult for him to get information out of her. But what he was able to gather when he first started talking to her was that she had just been in the Tuscarawas River. And though she was in really bad shape, like to look at her, he could see that she had gone through hell. She seemed to be more concerned about her friend. In that moment, though, he really couldn't get much information on her friend. So all he could really do is look at the situation and realize that this girl needed help. She needed assistance. So he helped her. He told her, like, don't worry, get in the car. I'm going to take care of you. And he comforted her and he took her to safety and he stayed with her. He didn't just drop her off and leave. He sat there with her to make sure that she was okay. And she later described him as her hero. Now, to backtrack a little bit, once he got the girl into the car, he did try to continue to talk to her, try to get more information out of her, but she was still very upset. She was in hysterics. She was crying. So it was difficult for him to get much useful information, but he did get just enough. He was able to learn that this girl was 18-year-old Brandi Hicks and that her best friend, 17-year-old Liz Reiser, was missing. Elizabeth Kinsey Reiser was born March 20th, 1983, and she was one of 4 children, the eldest and only daughter with 3 brothers, born to parents Becky and Jeff. As I said, Elizabeth, who went by Liz, was her family's oldest daughter, and I read some passages from a book that her mother wrote, and she said that after 19 and a half hours, Liz made her a mother, and when she looked down at her little girl, she just knew in that moment that her daughter was a miracle. Liz was described as down-to-earth, lively, generous, and the type of person who had a smile for every single person she met. And from everything I read, she really seemed to be one of those people who never met a stranger. One of her friends, this was a 15-year-old girl, said of her after her murder, quote, "People who know her lost a friend. People that didn't know her are thinking it could have been them or a best friend. They learned not to take friendship for granted." Liz was just a normal teenage girl living her life. She loved Mountain Dew and Dalmatians and the TV show The Rugrats, and she was excited to go to the school dance and to get her driver's license and to finally be graduating high school and starting her life. She was adored by her friends and cherished by her family, and every single person who knew her said that even at just the age of 17, the age where sometimes kids can be known to be a little selfish, she was the type of girl who loved helping people, and sadly her helpful nature and good heart would lead her to giving trust to somebody who did not deserve it, and this person would ultimately take her life. So with that, let's go back to that night. As I mentioned, Brandy was picked up by that off-duty cop at about 1:30 in the morning. So we're going to jump forward a little over 2 hours in the timeline here. It's about 3:45 a.m. on that night in May of 2000 when a police officer shows up at the household of Liz's family. Okay, he knocks on the door and it's Liz's little brother, Jordan. He was 12, I believe, who answered the door because his room was closest to the front door. So it's 3:45 in the morning. This 12-year-old boy hears a knock on the door, gets up and goes to the door. And when he opens it, he finds that there's a cop standing on his porch. And he's confused, obviously, like he was not expecting this. He was just asleep. And the cop is asking him about his sister, Liz. The cop said a little more to him, but he was kind of confused. I mean, it was the middle of the night. He was sleeping and he was 12. So the cop again is like, is your sister Liz here? And he's just like, I don't know. I'm going to go get my mom. So he does just that. He leaves, he goes upstairs, he goes to the bedroom of his parents. This is Becky and Jeff. And he wakes them up and tells them that Brandy was in the river and Liz is missing. Now, I cannot even imagine being a parent and getting this news, okay? Because they knew Brandy. They knew Brandy was their daughter's best friend, and they knew that Liz was going to be staying with Brandy that night. Like, they were going to be having a slumber party. They knew their daughter wasn't going to be coming home. So to have your kid come in your room in the middle of the night and tell you, like, there's a cop at the door who's saying that the girl that your daughter was with, your daughter's best friend Brandy, was found in a river and your daughter is missing, is the type of news that I truly cannot imagine getting. It sounds like an actual nightmare. It's the kind of news that I honestly cannot even begin to comprehend. And in hearing this news, Liz's mother, Becky, tore down the stairs with her husband right behind her. And they get to the porch and they see that, yes, there is a cop standing there. This wasn't their son having a bad dream. This was their reality right now. And as soon as they get there, the cop asks, like, okay, hello, is your daughter here? And she says, like, no, Becky. She says, like, no, my daughter is spending the night with her friend Brandy. And the cop tells her, like, okay, well, we went to Brandy's house and we looked and she's not there. And in that moment, they're just so confused because there's no context here. They don't know what's going on. And the cop's like, okay, well, is it possible that you could go and like check your daughter's room? Maybe she came home and you didn't realize it. You didn't hear, you were asleep, something. And so Becky's like, yeah. And she describes this in her book where she says that like the entire moments where she was walking to check Liz's room, it was just a sense of dread. She found it difficult for her to even walk. And as she approached her daughter's room, she knew right away. As soon as she saw her daughter's bedroom door was open and not closed, she knew that Liz was not there. And as soon as she finally was able to get herself all the way to the door and she looked inside, she found that that was true. Liz wasn't home. And something about this part of the story that really broke my heart is when her mom talks about the fact that when she looked at her daughter's room, it was such a mess. And she said that Liz had literally just cleaned her room, but she was the type of girl that could be in her room for just a couple of seconds and it would look like a tornado had tore through there. And I feel like that's just such a relatable thing. And I think that it humanizes Liz a lot. And I think that that's something that is oftentimes necessary because I think that as a society, people are so desensitized that you can hear the story and not realize that this is a person's life. This is a person who had a family that is devastated, and in this particular instance, a mother who is going in her room, seeing this, and living an actual nightmare. So after looking in Liz's room and finding that she wasn't there, she went back to the porch where her husband, Jeff, was waiting with this cop, and she tells him, like, no, she is not there. And it's at that moment that the cop tells her the little information that he did have. And what he told her was that a couple of hours prior, their daughter's best friend, the person she was supposed to be staying with, was found walking down a dark road. When she flagged down a car, the person driving the car happened to be a cop, and the cop saw that she was in bad shape. She was soaking wet. She was bleeding, and she told the cop that she had been in the Tuscarawas, question mark for locals, river. And she had told this cop that she didn't get there by herself. She had been attacked. So naturally, because she was in bad shape, she had been taken to a nearby hospital. This was Union Hospital. But that right there is all this cop really knew, that Brandy was found, that Brandy was hurt, that she was taken to a nearby hospital, and that when she was asked about Liz, all she could say was that Liz was missing. This was her family's worst nightmare. Okay, Liz wasn't even the type of kid that was typically allowed to have sleepovers with her friends on a school night, because remember, this was a Thursday night. And, or actually, well, it was a Wednesday night when she was spending the night. It was Thursday morning, early morning hours when they're getting this information. And this was just something that was so unusual that they actually let her go out. And it was only because like she was just about to graduate. She had already finished all of the work, like the last few days of school before graduation. Like you're not really doing anything. You're kind of watching movies and stuff. And that's the situation that Liz and Brandy were in. So they decided to just let her go, to go against what they normally did and let her go. And now they're getting this horrible news with hardly any information about what's really going on. Now, even though they didn't have any information, in learning the information they did learn, and learning that Brandy was hurt and Liz was missing, Becky said she knew immediately in her gut that something was wrong, because Liz was a good kid. She was said to be like an obedient teenager. Both her and Brandy were from super religious households. They went to church all the time and they lived like a very straight lifestyle. They were not the type of kids to like get themselves into any trouble. Definitely not the type of trouble that would bring the cops to their parents' house in the middle of the night. So she just knew that something was wrong. She said, of course, she hoped that she was wrong and that her kid was just out getting into some sort of trouble that she was going to have to scold her for later. But deep inside, she knew that that wasn't true. Now, after the cop left them standing there in the dark with little to no information, they really weren't able to go back to sleep. I can't see a reality in which your nerves would allow you to do that. And plus, the cop said that he would be in touch, that he would be contacting them with more information. So as a family, they prayed. They prayed for a good outcome, and they prayed for Liz to come home safely. Jeff, Liz's father, sat down on the couch and started to read his Bible, which seemed to be like, I wouldn't say a nervous tick, but something to help him take his mind off of what was happening. And Becky, her mother, stood at the bay window of the family home, looking out where she could see in 3 different directions. So the moment her daughter would walk back to the house, she'd be able to see her. And she was so excited to see her daughter coming home and be able to call the cops and tell them that the search was off. But hours went by and Liz didn't come home, and the cops didn't call with any additional information, and all of the hope that they had that she would be fine, that she was going to come home and they were just going to lay into her for making them worry so bad, melted away. Around 6 a.m., they couldn't wait anymore. They couldn't sit there and have no information, so they decided to head to Union Hospital, hoping that maybe their daughter was there, or at the very least, they knew Brandy was there, so maybe they could talk to her and get some more information about what was going on. So when they arrived at the hospital, they were put into a waiting room, and the waiting room they were in, Brandy's family was already there, and they all just kind of sat silently together for a while. But after a little bit of time, Liz's dad just like had an outburst where he said that he knew his daughter was dead. He said that God told him she was gone. He said that after the cop had left his house that morning and he sat down to read his Bible, he had opened it up to a specific passage. And he said that he didn't mean to open it up. This is just where his Bible opened up on its own. And this passage was Matthew 5:4, which read, quote, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." And he said as soon as he read this passage, he knew that his daughter was gone. And while at the hospital, that's why he said it. He said he knew she was gone. And he also said in that moment, before even knowing for sure that she was gone, that he needed to forgive the man who did it to her. And, when he said this, nobody knew what to say. Nothing had been confirmed yet, but everybody kind of felt like that was the case. And they were just hoping that they were wrong. But within a short amount of time, they were given confirmation that this was true, because cops came to them and said that a body had been found that matched Liz's description. And when they described like the clothes the body was wearing, they knew that that was Liz. And when they gave the officers a photo of Liz for comparison, they said that yes, this was her. So now her family, her parents had to go and tell her little brothers what had happened to her and tell them that their big sister was dead. So now let's talk about what Brandy says happened to her and Liz that night. It was Wednesday, right? It's Wednesday night. And as we know, Liz and Brandy were going to be having a sleepover, and they were super pumped about it. They were in a really good mood. They were about to graduate. They had both finished their finals at Dover's high school, And they were like really excited that life was about to begin for them. They could like feel that energy that they were about to be adults and things, well, I mean, Brandy was an adult, but things were just about to get started. They were super pumped to be able to spend the night together. They wanted to hang out, spend time together, chat, watch some movies. So they decided at about 9:30 p.m. to head over to the Hollywood Video. This was in the Newtown Mall, which was in nearby New Philadelphia. So the two went inside and they spent their time looking at movie covers, discussing the choir banquet at church that they had just gone to at the Buckeye Career Center, and they made their movie choices and they left. And it was while they were on their way back to their car that a man in his 20s came up to them and asked them if they would give him a ride home. This was like a younger guy. He wasn't that much older than them. Like he was maybe like 10 years older than them. He had dark hair that was sticking out of a baseball cap. It was like curling out of the sides. He had glasses. He looked like a super normal, friendly guy that you would see on the street. There was nothing about him that initially raised any alarm bells. Likely sensing the girls' apprehension at the fact that he was a stranger and he was asking them for a ride, he told them, like, it's not super far. It's maybe 10 minutes down the road. I live near this school, and if it's a problem, I can give you $20 for gas. I just really want to get home and see my wife and my kids before my kids go to bed. And so the girls sat and talked amongst themselves and decided that, yes, they would give him a ride. He needed help, and it was the right thing to do. And given that this was such a small town, they thought that they were safe. And so they chose to be good people and said, yes, they would give this stranger a ride home. Liz's mother, Becky, later said of this decision, quote, "The man talked with Liz and Brandy for a while. Liz said something was wrong, but Brandy thought that with the two of them, it would be safe to give him a ride," which truly makes what happens here all the sadder. So they got in the car with Brandy driving, Liz in the passenger seat, and the man sitting in the back seat, and they started to drive. And he said it was just 10 minutes down the road, but after 15 minutes of the girls driving and less houses being in their view, like they were seeing houses as they drove, but it was getting fewer and fewer. They were getting fewer and farther in between, I think is the way that I would say that and have it make sense. They got a little nervous because they're like, okay, you said 10 minutes, it's been 15, and there are like no houses out here now. So what's going on? So they ask him like, oh, is it much further? And he says, oh yeah, it's just a couple more minutes down the road. We're very close. So they drive a couple more minutes and he still says nothing and doesn't indicate that his house is like, oh, right there. So Brandy actually pulls the car over and tells him like, hey, listen, I'm sorry, but like if your house really is that close, you should be able to walk from here. It's late. It's a school night. We really need to get back. And that's when the guy says to them, like, okay, well, would it make a difference to you if I told you I have a gun? At that moment, the girls were scared. They looked at each other and Liz started to move her hands nervously, and they really had no idea what to do. And Brandy said of this moment, quote, "I knew it was bad news as soon as I told him to get out of the car, and he said, well, I've got a gun. I didn't think he was actually going to kill us." The man then asked them if they had any money because he wanted to rob them. And when they said, like, no, we don't have any cash on us, he told Brandy to just drive. He then gave her directions to a remote field about 6 miles away from the video store in Auburn Township, an area that he clearly knew about because as they entered this area and went up this hill, he told Brandy to slow down because the road was going to be bumpy. He continued to give Brandy directions until they got to the top of this hill, and then he had her stop the car and had both of the girls remove the shoelaces from their shoes. And he then took Brandy's shoelaces and tied her to the steering wheel of her car, like this kind of very tight, but not before he had Brandy take Liz's shoelaces and tie her hands behind her back. The man then got out of the car, and as soon as he did, Brandy and Liz looked at each other, and Liz reached over and grabbed Brandy's hand because remember, she's like attached to the steering wheel. So she grabs her hand, and the girls told each other that they loved each other. They were crying, and Brandy told Liz that she was sorry that she had gotten them into that situation. And Liz said, like, not to apologize, that they had agreed that this was the right thing to do. And they told each other that they loved each other again before this man opened up Liz's car door and told her to get out. And right before she got out, Brandy told her like not to worry, that they would see each other again. Brandy then watched as this man and Liz marched up this hill, like on this path, alone in the dark together, leaving her there to cry and panic because she had no idea what was going on. Now, once Liz and this man reached a clearing in the field, he had her kneel while he smoked a cigarette and considered what to do, because according to him, he really didn't have a plan. He wasn't planning to kill the girls. He just wanted to rob them, and they didn't have any money, so he didn't know what to do after that. He said that he considered letting her go, that he considered giving her directions back to town and letting her leave, but decided that he couldn't. It was too late, which no, it wasn't. It's never too late to choose not to kill somebody's child. But in his mind, it was. She had seen his face. She couldn't live. So he reached in his pocket and he pulled out a small knife. This was a linoleum knife with like a curved blade. And which this part just destroyed me, because he starts to tell her he's going to let her go and give her directions to town. And as he did that, he took the knife and cut her throat 3 times. When Liz was later found, she had a cut in her throat that was 10 inches wide and 2 inches deep, and it had nearly decapitated her. And what's so horrific about that, in addition to it is horrific, is the fact that her family know that this happened to her. Like, her mother wrote a book, as I said, and she also, they also go and do seminars and speeches and things like that. And her mom talked about the story of her daughter's murder, and more specifically about her forgiveness that she has for her daughter's killer. And she said, quote, "The man slit Liz's throat, nearly severing her head. He did several other things to her body as part of a satanic ritual." So that's what her family know of her. That's like the image and the picture and the information that they have in their head. And I don't know how a person goes on with that. Now, in the quote that I just read to you from Liz's mother, Becky, she said that he did several other things to her body. And what she's referring to is the fact that in addition to cutting her throat, he also stabbed her in the throat, he stabbed her in the back, and he stabbed her 5 times in her head and her scalp. It was so brutal that he ended up breaking this knife in the process. And once he was done, he just walked back to the car where Brandy was waiting, having no idea what was going on. She just knew that she was now seeing this dangerous stranger walking back alone without Liz. Now, once this man got back, Brandy asked him, where is Liz? And he didn't respond to her. He instead just told her to get out of the car. And she told him, I can't. You tied me to the steering wheel here. And that's when he took something and quickly cut the shoestrings off of her hands. And she says in that moment, it didn't even dawn on her that he may even have a knife. Once she was out of the car, he then marched her up the same hill that he had just gone up with Liz. And she says in that moment, she thought her life was over. She was like, I lived 18 years and that is it. And then she had all of these thoughts rushing through her head. She was thinking about everybody close to her, wondering how what was happening in that moment to her would affect them, wondering if they would even be able to find the girls out there because of where they were, and wondering if they would be mad at her, and Liz for letting a stranger in the car with them. And all of these thoughts are just going through her head and at a million miles a minute. Brandy said that once the two got to the top of the hill, there were 2 different directions you could go in. You could go left or you could go right. So he started leading her to the right. And she said that she tried to look to the left and that he kind of grabbed her face and turned it, but not before she had looked over and seen a mound on the ground, and didn't realize until later that what she was seeing was Liz's body. And that's because thankfully it was so dark out there. It was so dark that she couldn't really see what had happened to Liz. She saw the mound and later knew that that was Liz and knew that it hadn't been moving, but she wasn't able to see the wounds that she had or all of the blood on the ground because there was so much blood. And I'm just so thankful for her that she didn't have to see that, because I can't imagine living with that image of a person you love. Brandy and this man stood there in the dark on this hill for a while before finally he instructed her to go back to the car. So they got back to the car. This time he got into the driver's seat and he had her take off her socks so that he could put them over his hands before he started handling the vehicle, the steering wheel, the key, etc., and then he drove off. After a while of the two driving in silence, the man looked over to her and very matter-of-factly said to her, quote, "I killed your friend." And after he said this, she didn't react. She just looked out the window. She didn't cry. She didn't scream at him. She didn't want to give him any sort of satisfaction. And so after a couple of minutes, he looked at her again and he said, I just wanted to see your reaction. I just wanted to see if you would freak out, if you would cry. I wanted to see what you would do. But since you didn't react, I'll tell you the truth. And then he told her that Liz was fine, that he had given her directions back to town, and that she had left in the night. And Brandy said that in that moment, she actually believed him, and she actually thought that Liz was safe. And she thought to herself, like, if that's true and Liz is gone and she's fine, like, what am I still doing here? What is he going to do with me? And she was going to find out the answer to that soon, because he drove to a parking lot that was near a set of railroad tracks, and he parked the car. He had her get out, and the two started to walk down the tracks. She was terrified. She was crying. She was in pain. And this guy is just talking to her. This sounds like a nightmare to me. I truly cannot even imagine how scared she must have been to be out there alone on the train tracks with a guy who just told her that he had killed her friend. And he's acting totally normal to her, dude. He's just talking to her. He's asking her questions. He's asking her about school and college and asking whether or not she had a boyfriend. This was a totally normal conversation having that is being had in a totally abnormal, the most abnormal situation that one could be in. And she had to have just been so confused. As he walked her down the tracks, he continued to try to have this normal conversation with her. And she, humored him. She kept talking to him. She kept being kind to him, because she thought that if she did this and he learned more about her and saw her as a person, he may not hurt her. After a while of the two walking together, they came upon a train car, and he had Brandy go inside. And once inside, he robbed her. She had been wearing some jewelry, and he stole it from her. And then he asked her, like, how badly do you want to live? And she said that she wanted to live very much and that she would do anything to survive. And that's when he asked her to strip. And obviously she hesitated because she didn't want to do that. But he told her, like, listen, if you want to live, you're going to do everything that I say. And then he unzipped his pants. Now, there is no silver lining here, because what happened to Brandy is so traumatizing, and I can't even imagine living with it. But something that I am thankful for is the fact that this man was unable to perform. But that doesn't mean that he didn't try. And she said that she's not sure how long it lasted, but it felt like hours before he was very frustrated and stopped what he had been doing, what he had been making her do, and threw her clothes at her and told her to get dressed. So she says that she put on her clothes very quickly and then stayed huddled in sort of a ball on the ground, because she had just been through hell and she didn't want to move. She didn't want to breathe. She didn't want to do anything, but he forced her to get up, to leave the train car, and to continue walking. Finally, after walking for a while, the two came to a train trestle over the river. And if you're unfamiliar with that, because I was unfamiliar with that, the best way I can describe it to you is, have you seen the movie The Lost Boys? In that movie, okay, they go to the train tracks and they're like hanging onto the train tracks. The train went over them and they're hanging over the river in their like vampiric initiation sequence. Okay. Well, the train track situation like that, that's over water, that is a train trestle. So once there, the man told Brandy to get on her knees on this like platform. There's a platform off the trestle, and he told her to get on her knees and to face the water. And she did what she was told to do. And after she did, the man reached in his pocket, he pulled out one of the girl's shoelaces, and he started to strangle her with it. Now, Brandy says in that instance, she didn't know what was going on. All she knew is that he told her to get on her knees. She did what she was told, and that all of a sudden, she couldn't breathe. She had no idea what he was doing. She just couldn't breathe, and then she blacked out. When she came to, he was standing behind her, and she realized that he didn't know that she had woken up. So she tried to lay there and play dead. She tried to lay there and hold her breath after just being strangled. So everything in her would have wanted to take a breath, and she did everything that she could not to. As she laid there, trying to hold her breath and seem like she wasn't alive, he proceeded to punch her and kick her in the back over and over. And as he did this, she held her breath. But one of the kicks was so hard that it knocked the wind out of her, and she expelled all the air that was in her body. And at that moment, he realized that she was alive. So he literally, this is so horrific to me, he straddles her. She's on the ground. He straddles her. He takes her head in both his hands, and he tries to physically, manually break her neck. He did this on several occasions. I think like 3 different times. He tried to snap her neck with his bare hands. This too did not work, and he got very upset. She was laying there. She was already beaten. She was barely conscious, and he then takes her head and starts beating it into the train tracks before finally just trying to throw her off the trestle into the river. But dude, her foot got stuck. He tries to knock her off. Her foot gets stuck between the railroad slacks, and she hangs there, dangling upside down above the water, before finally he knocks her loose, and she falls head first 30 feet into the river below. Now, where she landed, there was a lot of debris, there were a lot of logs, so one, she is so lucky that she was okay. Okay, that's relative, but that she didn't hit her head on something when she fell into the water, so she went head first, because I think we'd be having a very different ending to this case if that was what happened. But two, because there was so much debris in the water, there were things that she could grab onto. So first, she goes into the water, and when she comes up like back first with her face in the water. So she lets herself float. She lets her arms and legs float up, and she holds her breath and pretends to be dead. Okay. And she lets the current take her body under the bridge, where she grabs on to a log and then just sits there and is completely silent while she looks up at the train tracks above, and she can see the red glow from his cigarette as he paced back and forth. The water was cold. Man, this might have been May, but it was cold. It's Ohio. I don't know what the weather's like in Ohio in May. It's warm where we are, but there it was cold. So she couldn't stay in the water, and she ended up actually pulling herself up on top of a log, and then she just laid there, dude. She didn't move. She tried not to breathe. She tried to just seem like she wasn't alive as she waited and watched as he paced back and forth, as he kicked rocks into the water and smoked a cigarette. And then finally he left. After she saw him leave, she waited a couple of minutes to make sure he was actually gone before she let herself go back to the water and tried to make her way towards the shore. And she said that it wasn't very far, but it felt like it took her forever because it was using all of the strength and energy she had in her body just to get herself there. And then once she got herself to the edge of the river, she's like, oh my God, like, what if I went the wrong way? What if he's not actually gone? What if he's literally just there waiting for me? So she peeks her head out of the water. She looks both ways and she doesn't see him. So she decides to use all the strength and bravery she has. She gets herself out of that water and she runs to the nearby road, where she flagged down several cars that did not stop for her until finally she was able to flag down that off-duty police officer. So once Brandy was rescued, she tells the cops this story, and they are shocked. They can't believe that a monster like this, who could do this to two young girls, was like living in their small town, or had been in their small town. And they knew that though they had this girl in front of them, they had another girl who was out there that they needed to look for, who at the very least was going to need some assistance and some help, because they don't know at this point that she's not alive. Brandy had seen her there and she wasn't moving, but there was still a chance that she was alive and unconscious. And even if she wasn't, even if she was already gone, they still needed to find her and recover her. So local police teamed up with Ohio police, and a search party was set up to go out and try to find Liz. Now, the police had a general idea of where Liz and Brandy had been with this man, and though he had seemed to be very familiar with the area, Brandy was having trouble recounting exactly where they had been because it wasn't a place that she frequented. So officers went out to the general area and they started searching. They had flashlights. It's the middle of the night or early morning hours, and they're looking, and a couple of officers end up finding a road, and it was a road that was pretty bumpy, and they knew that it kind of fit the general description of what Brandy had or where Brandy had said they had been. So they start to go down this road. As they made their way down this road that went up a hill, they were scanning the area with flashlights when finally they come upon the mound on the ground. And at first they can't even really tell that it's human, but as they get closer, they realize that this is the body of Liz. And even though it was clear she wasn't alive, they did check for her pulse and confirm that she was gone. Now, even though they had these two crime scenes, right? They had the area where Liz's body was found and they had the area where Brandy had been. They were like looking in the river and things like that. They didn't have a ton of information like from the get-go to try to track this guy down. Like Brandy did give the police a description of the man, the best that she could to her memory, but it was pretty vague, and the description that she gave kind of described a lot of dudes. There just wasn't a lot that sort of set him apart. He was said to be a stocky built guy who was maybe about 5'7", in his 20s, who had dark hair, and she believed he was wearing wire-rimmed glasses, and he had a baseball hat. Like, that's really all she could give them, because that's all she had in her brain to give them. And, I think about that all the time. I would be like, eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. I would be the fucking worst, dude. Like, I am so bad at, first off, I don't have a photographic memory. I know that some people see images in their heads when they think of things. I'm not that person. I cannot picture images in my head. So I couldn't, it would be laughable. It would be laughable. It would be like, have you seen this man? Deadpool? It doesn't matter. It would be horrible. So I can only imagine how somebody could do that with trauma. Like, I don't know. I don't know. The point is, all they really had against this guy in the I was going to say the early days, right, is that this vague description of what he looked like, and also the fact that he seemed to know where he was going with the girl. So it was somebody that they believed either knew the area or was local. Now, just now I said day, not a matter of days, a matter of day. And that's because this case got solved very quickly. And that's because almost immediately after Brandy was found and they started looking into Liz's murder, they received a call with a tip. A woman named Sheila called the police and said that she needed to tell them that her son had committed a murder. She basically said that her son's brother-in-law, this was a man named Jeff, had called her and told her that her son, this was 27-year-old Matthew Vaca, had killed somebody, had confessed to him, Jeff, that he had killed somebody. And so he believed that he, Jeff, and she, Sheila, needed to call the police on Sheila's son. So after receiving this call from Sheila, the police obviously contact Jeff immediately, because it's like, what do you mean? Right? And as soon as they contact Jeff, Jeff's like, you know what? I'm here to tell you everything. And what he tells police is that in the early morning hours of the 25th of May, he, at about the exact same time that Brandi Hicks would have been running down the road getting picked up by the police, was woken in the night by his brother-in-law, Matthew. So Jeff was the brother of Matthew's wife and the uncle of Matthew's 3 kids, because yes, he is a father. Anyways, Matthew wakes up Jeff and tells him, like, hey, come on, get dressed, you're coming with me. He said that they were driving around for a while, not really going anywhere, not really talking. So finally he looks over at Matthew and was like, so what the fuck's going on? Like, what are we doing here? Why did you wake me up? What's going on? And Matthew was silent for a while before finally he looks over at Jeff and says, quote, I killed a girl. Now, Jeff didn't believe him at first, because like that would be a lot for someone to say and for you to just accept right off the bat. But then Matthew's like, okay, you don't believe me? Let me show you. Let me show you what I did. And he then goes to that field and takes Jeff to Liz's body. He shows him Liz's body and then tells him that he needs his help. He needs Jeff to help him look in the field for that broken piece of knife. Because remember, I told you that the knife broke. He was worried his fingerprints could be on that. So they look for it. Eventually they do end up finding it, and then he takes that along with other evidence from the murder, like bloody clothes, puts them in a bag and throws them in the river. And I do know that police did search the river. I saw reports that they were out there searching the river. I don't know if the stuff was ever recovered, but I know it was looked for. So Jeff tells police this, and the very next day they're able to get a warrant for Matthew's arrest, and they end up tracking him because of a phone call that he made, and they track him to Lake Park. And once police track him there, they approach him. He's there in the park. They approach him and they ask him, like, what are you doing here, guy? And he tells them that he's there waiting for his mother because they're going to go on a jog. But they're like, no, that's not true. We know who you are. But they don't say that. They just ask him for a social security number. He gives them his social security number. And when they run it, they're like, actually, we know that you, sir, are Matthew Vaca, and you are under arrest. Now, when the news of this murder and attempted murder got released to the media, everybody was talking about it. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that 2 teenage girls that were just trying to have a slumber party went out to get movies and were attacked, and one girl was killed. Another girl was almost killed by this person. It was a lot for anybody to handle. Like, Liz's school made an announcement, and grief counselors were brought in to help any child who felt like they needed somebody to talk to, and many did. This like totally rocked their sort of image of the world and the security they felt. They were realizing that they weren't actually indestructible like so many teenagers feel like they are. A memorial was made for Liz and Brandy at the Dover High School flagpole, a flagpole that friends of Liz's prayed at in a circle once they learned that Matthew was pleading guilty. Now, when people in Dover heard what happened, heard about who did it and how random it was, they were shocked because they had assumed that this was not a local. Like they thought this had to have been somebody passing through. This had to have been a stranger. We couldn't have somebody this dangerous, this fucked up in the head, living in our community all this time. And now they knew that they knew that this guy who was local, who people knew, and who people who knew him also knew Liz, like it was such a small town, and they were realizing that they couldn't trust their own neighbor, essentially. He was a young husband with 3 little kids, and he was the type of person that people didn't know had this darkness in him, but he did. And he had had several run-ins with the law before this. He had a long criminal history that included charges for things like threatening to kill his stepfather, forgery, substance abuse, and threatening to kill his wife with a knife and a shotgun. And at the time of Liz's murder and Brandy's assault and attempted murder, he was out on probation for charges for, theft and forgery, something like that. He was on probation when he did this. Now, because he was out on probation when he committed these crimes, it was very easy for them to just arrest him and keep him in custody while they tried to prove their case. But it turns out they weren't going to need to do that because after being arrested, Matthew pretty much instantly confessed to everything. He said he didn't know why he did what he did. He said that he really truly believed that he was just going to rob the girls when he got in the car with them that night, and that once things started to spiral out of control, he used it as an opportunity to see what it felt like to kill another human being. So anyways, he was arrested and he was charged with so many things. Okay, he was charged with murder. He was charged with attempted murder, kidnapping, rape, even though he was unsuccessful, tampering with evidence, and abusing a corpse. And he was held without bail while he was awaiting trial. And the prosecution wanted to go after the death penalty. And this seemed to be something that he really didn't want to happen. Okay, so he ended up taking a plea deal. He ended up taking a deal where he would plead guilty, and in exchange, the death penalty would be taken off the table, which was something that the prosecutor really didn't want to do. This prosecutor seemed to have a lot of anger towards Matthew, which rightfully so. And she said he deserved to die for what he did. She believed that. But in talking to Liz's family, in talking to Brandy's family, and in talking to Brandy herself, none of them wanted this man to get the death penalty. And so the prosecutor did honor that. After it was announced that Matthew was going to be making this plea deal, his mother Sheila did come out and make a statement where she said that this is what Matt wanted. Matthew, we are not on a first name. Well, we're on a first name basis. We're not on any basis. Matthew, Mr. Vaca. Asshole. His mother spoke and said that this is what he always wanted to do, that he didn't want to put Brandy and put Liz's family through the trauma of a trial. And also in doing this was going to ensure that he could have the opportunity to see his kids one day, because otherwise he would be put to death. And his mother said what he did was such a departure from the Matt that she knew and she loved. And it did seem to be a bit of a departure. I mean, not really. Threatening your father-in-law and your wife with weapons is pretty fucking violent, but that is not exactly trying to murder 2 teenage girls. There is a bit of a leap there, but it did seem to be random, and it seemed to be so in nobody knew why. That's the thing, is still nobody knows why. The judge even asked him, can you please explain yourself? Can you explain why you did this? Is it because of your drinking? Is it because of your drugs? Is it because of how you like porn? Is it because of your interest in Marilyn Manson? And he was like, no, it had nothing to do with any of that. It was just me. Though his defense attorney did say that it was an impulsive decision made by somebody who was on a 2-day drunk. Now, during his sentencing hearing, Matthew had to sit there and listen to victim impact statements from those whose lives he ruined. And most notable of those people was Brandy. When she got in the stand and she spoke to him, she told him, how dare you? How could you do this? How could you take Liz? You have no idea how good of a person you took from this world was. And then she said specifically to him, and I quote, "Who can I talk to now? I've lost my best friend. Oh my God, that just like breaks my heart. I'm sorry. But she continues saying, quote, I guess I have to forgive you. I don't really want to. It's like my mom said, if we don't forgive you, God won't forgive us. That was her and her mother's position, but not everybody felt that forgiveness towards Matthew Vaca. Brandy's grandmother said that he could rot in hell, which I feel like I would be more on that team always. Now, Matthew did try to read his own statement to the court where he, took responsibility for what he did, but he became so emotional that he wasn't able to read it himself. So his statement was read by his public defender, and it said in part, quote, I know I destroyed 3 families in one night. I know the Lord is with us, watching over us. I'm ready and willing to face the consequences of my actions. And he also said that he would be praying for all of the families who were hurt by what he did, which is moving. Pause not. And I'm not the only one who feels that way. At the end of the sentencing hearing, the prosecutor spoke to Matt where she said that she believes he deserved the death penalty, that if it was up to her, he would be being put to death, but also said that a quick death was too good for him. And then she said specifically to him, quote, I want you to understand what you have to look forward to in prison. In prison, you will be beaten repeatedly. You will be brutally raped. You will lose every ounce of dignity that you have left in your body, and you will live in terror. Not for the hour or so that Liz Reiser did, or for the hour that Brandi Hicks did, but for every minute for the rest of your life. Your conscience will eat away at you, and when the good Lord decides to take your life, you will go to hell. Which I can't snap, but snaps. But in an effort to be respectful, everyone doesn't feel that way, and Liz's family doesn't feel that way. Liz's father, Jeff, gave a statement where he showed compassion to Matthew Vaca, where he said, quote, my heart grieves for you when I think of the things you've got to go through. Worse than death, I'm afraid. Liz's family really has made forgiveness the foundation of how they have dealt with losing their child. Even after Matthew was sentenced, her parents asked if they could see him, and they actually sat with him and they prayed with him, and they even convinced him not to take his own life after he said that he didn't think he should be able to live after he did what he did. Then Becky said of this mindset, quote, I had a choice. I chose forgiveness because it freed me from whatever I was going to have to face. It gave me the peace and strength to face forward. Matthew will have to answer to God for his sins, just as we all do. We have prayed for this man's soul from the moment we knew what had happened. Ultimately, the judge gave Matthew Vaca the maximum sentence that he was allowed to give him, which is 96.5 years, with no possibility of parole until 2096, when he is 123 years old, and he is unable to appeal this conviction. And I think the judge gave him the maximum because he believes that, or they believe that Matthew really is a dangerous man. And they illustrated this by saying to him, quote, I'm convinced that if you had that knife in your possession, Brandi Hicks would be dead. And when he received the sentence, he cried, which I say good riddance to him, truly. Like, what a piece of shit. I'm sorry, but like, I don't have the forgiveness in my heart that Liz's family does. I just don't. And it's not my forgiveness to give, so my opinion really doesn't matter. But for me, I'm like, bye. And in addition to the 96.5 years, he was also given like 22 additional years for violating his probation. So again, bye. I just find the fact that he cried to be very rich, like the fact that he cried for himself to be so disrespectful, because like he murdered a 17-year-old child for no reason and tried to kill another 18-year-old girl and traumatized her. And I would say ruined her life, but I did look into Brandy and she does seem to be doing well. She is married and she has kids and it looks like she's happy. It looks like she was able to make something good with her situation. And I'm glad, because when this first happened, she said that her immediate goal was to be happy and to move on with her life and to be able to be a kid again. And I really, really hope she was able to. And with that, my friends, is the story of the murder of Liz Reiser and the attempted murder of Brandi Hicks. I hope that you found my telling to be informative. I hope I gave you every bit of information you would want when looking into this case. And of course, I just want to thank you for remembering Liz and Brandy with me today. Now, considering everything I told you throughout this video, I want to revisit the question of the day, and that was this. Do you believe that when Matthew Vaca asked these two girls for a ride that night, he intended to murder them? Or do you think he really did just plan to rob them and things kind of spiraled out of control? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. I'm very curious to hear what you have to say. Before you leave, please don't forget to leave me a comment down below with whatever case you'd like to see me cover in the future. As you may know, I have a long list of cases. Whenever you leave me a suggestion, I put it on my list with your name next to it. So if I do cover it, I can give you a shout out. I love looking into the cases you guys suggest because they're often cases I haven't heard of or cases that need more coverage, and I know you're filled with great ideas and great taste. Otherwise, you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing, ringing the bell, and leaving me a comment down below introducing yourself. I put out new videos every single week, and I'd love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do that if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us, one of us, one of us. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below, along with a link to my membership and a link to my merch store. Now, if you've made it this far, 1, you're a real one. And 2, I want to let you know that my YouTube videos, my audio and video on some platforms has been turned into a podcast. It's True Crime with Bratterstein on pretty much everywhere that you can get podcasts. So if you wouldn't mind searching me, listening, sharing if you think that it deserves that. And if not, that's fine. I just want to thank you for being here anyway. Now, with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. I hope to see you in my next video. And in the meantime, take care of yourself.